The TurboGrafx-16 Entertainment SuperSystem, known in Japan and in France as the PC Engine, is a home video game console joint developed by Hudson Soft and NEC, released in Japan on October 30, 1987, in the United States on August 29, 1989, and in France on November 22, 1989. It was the first console released in the 16-bit era, albeit still utilizing an 8-bit CPU. Originally intended to compete with the Nintendo Entertainment System, it ended up competing against the Mega Drive, Genesis, and later on the Super Famicom, Super NES. The TurboGrafx-16 has an 8-bit CPU and a dual 16-bit GPU, and is capable of displaying 482 colors simultaneously, out of 512, with dimensions of 14 cm x 14 cm x 3.8 cm. The NEC PC Engine once held the record for the world's smallest game console. In France, the system was released shortly after its American debut under its original Japanese name, PC Engine. In the United Kingdom, Telegames released a slightly altered version of the American model simply as the TurboGrafx in 1990 in extremely limited quantities. Although there was no full-scale PAL region release of the system, imported PC Engine consoles were largely available in France and Benelux through major retailers thanks to the unlicensed importer Sodai Peng. The TurboGrafx-16 failed to break into the North American market and sold poorly. However, in Japan the PC Engine was very successful, briefly outselling Super Famicom, and eventually being in a steady second place, ahead of the Sega Mega Drive. Two major revisions, the PC Engine SuperGrafx and the TurboGrafx, were released in 1989 and 1991, respectively. The entire series was succeeded by the PCFX in 1994, which was only released in Japan. History. The TurboGrafx-16 was a collaborative effort between the relatively young Hudson Soft and NEC. NEC's interest in entering the lucrative video game market coincided with Hudson's failed attempt to sell designs for then advanced graphics chips to Nintendo. The TurboGrafx-16 was the first video game console to have a CD-ROM peripheral, and first device ever to use CD-ROM as a storage medium for video games. NEC released the CD-ROM Squared in Japan on December 4, 1988, and released the TurboGrafx CD in the United States on August 1, 1990. NEC was also the first to market a game console with an integrated CD-ROM drive, the TurboGrafx of 1991. The TurboGrafx CD had a launch price of $399.99, and did not include any bundled games. Fighting Street and Monster Lair were the TurboGrafx CD launch titles. Wise Book 1 and 2 soon followed. The TurboGrafx series was the first video game console ever to have a contemporaneous fully self-contained portable counterpart, the Turbo Express, that contained identical hardware and played identical game software. The TurboGrafx-16 was released in the New York City and Los Angeles test market in late August 1989. Initially, the TurboGrafx-16 was marketed as a direct competitor to the NES, and early television ads touted the TG-16's superior graphics and sound. These ads featured a brief montage of the TG-16's launch titles: Blazing Lasers, China Warrior, Vigilante, Alien Crush, etc. The TG-16 was also in direct competition with the Sega Genesis, which had had its own New York, Los Angeles test market launch 2 weeks prior. On August 14, The Genesis launch was accompanied by an ad campaign mocking NEC's claim that the TurboGrafx-16 was the first 16-bit console. NEC claimed that it had sold 750,000 TG16 consoles in the United States, and 500,000 CD-ROM units worldwide, by March 1991. That year NEC released the PC Engine Duo, a model which could play both TurboGrafx-16 cards and CDs. The console was licensed to Turbo Technologies Incorporated, who released it in North America in 1992 as the Turbo Duo. The unit came into competition with the Sega CD, which was released almost immediately after. Turbo Technologies ran comic book ads featuring Johnny Turbo. The ads mocked Sega, and emphasized that though the Turbo Duo and Sega CD had the same retail price, the Turbo Duo was a standalone console and included 5-pack and games, whereas Sega CD buyers needed to purchase separately sold games and Sega Genesis units before they could use the system. However, the North American console gaming market continued to be dominated by the Super NES and Genesis rather than the new CD-based consoles. In May 1994, Turbo Technologies announced that it was dropping support for the Duo, though it would continue to offer repairs for existing units and provide ongoing software releases through independent companies in the USA and Canada. The final commercialized release for the PC Engine was Dead of the Brain Part 1 and 2 on June 3, 1999. Variations. Several variations and related products of the PC Engine were released throughout the 1990s. First-party models. The TurboGrafx-CD, released as the CD-ROM squared system in Japan, is an add-on console which, when attached to a standard TurboGrafx-16, can play 400th games and audio CDs. It was followed by the Super CD-ROM squared system, which was released as both an add-on unit for the PC Engine with built-in BIOS, and as a SuperSystem card for the original CD-ROM squared system, which adds 192 kilobytes of RAM required to play titles in Super CD-ROM squared format. Certain games in Japan were released in a third disc format, the arcade CD-ROM squared, requiring the use of an arcade card. The arcade card was available in a Pro version designed solely for the original CD-ROM squared system, and a Duo version that worked with the Super CD-ROM squared system and all PC Engine Duo models. These are not compatible with the TurboGrafx-16, nor with the Turbo Duo, without an adapter. The SuperGrafx is a variation of the standard PC Engine hardware. This system is nearly identical to the original PC Engine, except it has a second HUX 6270A, a HUX 6202 to combine the output of the two VDCs. 4 times as much RAM, twice as much video RAM, and a second layer, plane of scrolling. The CPU, sound, and color palette were not upgraded, making the expensive price tag a big disadvantage to the system. NEC also decided to not include the extra 2 video chips in the all-in-one Duo replacement system. Only 5 exclusive SuperGrafx games and 2 hybrid games were released, and the system fell into obscurity. Other members of the PC Engine family include the Shuttle, the LT, the TurboGrafx and TurboGrafx 2, the Duo R and the Duo RX. The PC Engine was officially released in Europe as the TurboGrafx, although it received a very limited release. The Turbo Express is a portable version of the TurboGrafx, released in 1990 for $249.99. It was the most advanced handheld of its time and could play all the TG16's HUCard games 5 years before the Sega Nomad could do the same for Sega Genesis games. Its Japanese equivalent is the PC Engine GT. It has a 2.6-inch backlit, active matrix color LCD screen, the most advanced on the market for a portable video game unit at the time. The screen contributed to its high price and short battery life. However, its keypad layout is similar to that of the original Game Boy, with the unique addition of two turbo switches that engage two levels of semi-automatic high-speed controller button retriggering to assist the player. It shares the capabilities of the TurboGrafx, giving it 512 available colors, stereo sound, and the same custom CPU at 7.15909 MHz. The optional TurboVision TV tuner included RCA audio, video input, allowing the user to use TurboExpress as a video monitor. The TurboLink allowed two-player play. Falcon, a flight simulator, included a head-to-head dogfight mode that could only be accessed via TurboLink. However, very few games offered co-op play modes especially designed with the TurboExpress in mind. NEC Home Electronics released the PC Engine Duo in Japan in 1991, which combined the PC Engine and the Super CD-ROM squared into a single unit. The system can play audio CDs, CD plus GS, CD-ROM squared and Super CD-ROM squared games as well as standard HUCards. It was launched for the North American market as the Turbo Duo in 1992. The American version of Duo was originally bundled with one control pad, an AC adapter, RCA cables, Wise Book 1 and 2, and a Super CD-ROM squared including Bonk's Adventure, Bonk's Revenge, Gate of Thunder and a secret version of Bomberman accessible via an Easter egg. The system was also packaged with one random HUCard game which varied from system to system. The SuperSystem card required for Super CD-ROM squared format games when using the TurboGrafx CD add-on was built into the Duo, rather than requiring the card to be inserted at all times when playing a Super CD title. Third-party models. The X1 Twin is a combination of X1 computer and PC Engine. It only plays HUCards. The PCKD863G, a computer monitor with a built-in PC Engine, likewise only plays HUCards. Pioneer Corporation's Pioneer Laser Active supports an add-on module, which allows the use of PC Engine games, as well as new LD-ROM squared titles that only work on this device. NEC also released their own Laser Active unit and PC Engine add-on module, under an OEM license. Only 11 LDROM2 titles were produced, with only 3 of them released in North America. The TurboGrafx-16 was released in South Korea by a third party under the name V-Star16. Various PC Engine shuttle clones exist, with varying levels of compatibility with original PC Engine games. One of the more common types is the PC Boy. The PC Engine was never officially released in continental Europe, but some companies imported them and made SCART conversions on a moderate scale. In France, Sodai Peng imported Japanese systems and added an RGB cable called Audio Video Plus cable. This mod improved the original video signal quality extensively and made the consoles work with SECAM televisions. In Germany, several importers sold converted PC engines with PAL-RF as well as RGB output. The connectors and pinouts used for the latter were frequently compatible with the Amiga video port, with 2 unconnected pins used for the audio channels. Peripheral compatibility. All PC Engine systems support the same controller peripherals, including pads, joysticks and multi-tops. Except for the V-Star, Shuttle, GT, and systems with built-in CD-ROM drives, all PC Engine units shared the same expansion connector, which allowed for the use of devices such as the CD-ROM unit, game saves and AV output. The TurboGrafx and V-Star units use a different controller port than the PC Engines, but adapters are available and the protocol is the same. The TurboGrafx offers the same expansion connector pinout as the PC Engine, but has a slightly different shape, so peripherals must be modified to fit. The Arcade Card Pro is designed for the original CD-ROM squared system add-on, adding the 2,304 kilobytes of RAM required by arcade CD-ROM squared games. The Arcade Card Duo is for the Super CD-ROM squared system and the PC Engine Duo RX consoles and adds 2,048 kilobytes RAM. Since those systems already have 256K of RAM built in, the various CD-ROM game types are CD-ROM squared. Standard CD-ROM game runs on all CD-ROM squared systems without any additional requirements. Super CD-ROM squared requires a Super System card to work on the original CD-ROM squared system. No card is required for Super CD-ROM squared and Duo consoles. Arcade CD-ROM squared requires an Arcade Card Pro on the original CD-ROM squared system, or an Arcade Card Duo on the Super CD-ROM squared and Duo consoles. Video formats. All PC Engine hardware outputs video in NTSC format, including the European TurboGrafx. It generates a PAL-compatible video signal by using a chroma encoder chip not found in any other system in the series. Technical specifications. The PC Engine is a relatively compact video game console, owing to an efficient 3-chip architecture and its use of small ROM cartridges called HCards. Hudson Soft developed the HCard from the B-card technology it piloted on the MSX. HCards are about the size of a credit card, but slightly thicker. They are not unlike the slim cartridge reserved for low-budget game releases on the Sega Master System. The largest Japanese HCard games were up to 20 MB in size, with only one exception, the PC Engine SuperGrafx. All PC Engine hardware could play the entire HCard library, and every CD system could play all of the licensed 400th games with the right system card. Some unlicensed 400th games by Games Express required a Duo system, due to their games requiring both a special system card packaged with the games and the 256 kilobytes of RAM built into the Duo. The console's CPU is a Hudson Soft HUC-6288-bit microprocessor, which features integrated bank switching hardware. Its 16-bit graphics processor and video color encoder chip were also developed by Hudson Soft. It holds 8 kilobytes of work RAM and 64 kilobytes of video RAM. Display resolution. X resolution variable, maximum of 565, taking into consideration overscan limitations of court televisions at the time. The horizontal resolutions were realistically limited to something a bit less than what the system was actually capable of. Consequently, most game developers limited their games to either 256, 352, or 512 pixels in display width for each of the three modes. Y resolution variable, maximum of 242. It is possible to achieve an interlaced mode with a maximum vertical resolution of 484 scan lines by alternating between the two different vertical resolution modes used by the system. However, it is unknown at this time if this interlaced resolution is compliant with NTSC televisions. The majority of TurboGrafx-16 games use 256 x 239, though some games, such as Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective, did use 512 x 224. Colors available: 512. Colors on screen: maximum of 482. Palettes: maximum of 32. Colors per palette: 16 per background palette, and 15 per sprite palette. Sprites simultaneously displayable: 64 on screen, 16 per scanline. Sizes: 16 x 16, 16 x 32, 16 x 64, 32 x 16, 32 x 32, 32 x 64. Palette: each sprite can use up to 15 unique colors via one of the 16 available sprite palettes. Layers: The HUX6270AVDC was capable of displaying one sprite layer. Sprites could be placed either in front of or behind background tiles by manipulating a bit which caused indirect pixel color entry number 0 of the background tile to act as transparent. Tiles size: 8x8. Palette. Each background tile can use up to 15 unique colors via one of the 16 available background palettes and one shared color for a total of 16 colors per tile. The first color entry of each background subpalette is ignored. Instead, color number 0's RGB value is shown in its place. When a specific sprite is set to show behind the BG layer via the priority bit, all tiles that use relative color number 0 will not show BG color number 0, but instead will show the sprite pixel layers. The HUX6270AVDC was capable of displaying one background layer. Audio capacity: 6 wavetable synthesis audio channels, programmable through the HUX6280A CPU. Each channel had a frequency of 111.87 kHz for single cycle of 32 samples with a bit depth of 5 bits. Each channel also was allotted 20 bytes of RAM for sample data. The waveforms were programmable, so the composers were not limited to the standard selection of waveforms, but the use of standard waveforms and semi-standard forms, such as a 25% pulse wave, were used fairly often. The first two audio channels were capable of LFO when channel number 2 was used to modulate channel number 1 with vibrato. In theory, this could also be used to perform an FM operation, though due to other limitations, this was never done with an inaudible waveform. But LFO's modulator is subsonic rather than sonic, so LFO will not change the carrier's timbre, just its behavior, and as a result, LFO does not really sound anything like FM. The final two audio channels were capable of noise generation. Optional software enabled DirectDA, which allows for sampled sound to be streamed into any of the 6 PSG audio channels. When a channel is in DA mode, the frequency is as fast as the CPU can stream bytes to the port, though in practicality it is limited to 6.99 kHz when using the timer interrupt with its smallest loop setting, or 15.7 kHz using the scanline interrupt. There is a method that combines two channels in DDA mode to play back 8-bit, 9-bit, or 10-bit samples. The addition of the CD-ROM peripheral adds CD-DA sound, and a single ADPCM channel to the existing sound capabilities of the PC Engine. Region protection with HUC cards. A limited form of region protection was introduced between markets, which for the most part was nothing more than running some of the HUC cards pin-out connections in a different arrangement. There were several major aftermarket converters sold to address this problem, and were sold predominantly for use in converting Japanese titles for play on a TG16. In the Japanese market, NEC went further by adding a hardware-level detection function to all PC Engine systems that detected if a game was a US release, and would then refuse to play it. The only known exception to this is the US release of Clax, which did not contain this function. The explanation commonly given for this by NEC officials is that most US conversions had the difficulty level reduced, and in some cases were censored for what was considered inappropriate content, and consequently, they did not want the US conversion to re-enter the Asian market and negatively impact the perception of a game. With some minor soldering skills, a change could be made to PC engines to disable this check. The only Japanese games that could not be played on a US system using one of these converters were the SuperGrafx titles, which could only be played on a SuperGrafx. There was no region protection on TurboGrafx CD and CD-ROM squared system games.